Hello and welcome. I'm Jonathan Beale and this is the ASB Investment Podcast, a show that keeps you up to date on the market and helps you make smart choices with your investments. It's our first podcast of the decade and we have some of the ASB Wealth team in the studio to chat about the burning questions their customers are asking them and how the team helps them make the best investment decisions. These are entirely our own views. It's not investment advice, but we know plenty of experts at ASB that'll be happy to chat if you need. Welcome everyone to the booth. We're upstairs today. We're not. We're still on Franklin Road in Ponsonby, but we've moved up to a new booth, and we've got some new people in the podcast studio today. So we've got Sean Lewington, we've got Rebecca Drummond, and we've got Glenn Wasley, who's driven up from the Tron to come and see us. So welcome to all of you. Now, you all have something in common, don't you?
We do.
Yes,
we do. One, you're probably a little nervous about being in the booth, but two, you're all what we call wealth managers at ASB. That's correct, isn't it?
It is.
correct. Yep.
Okay, so I thought what we're going to do a little bit different today on this podcast is historically we've had sort of the fund managers here from State Street and BlackRock and Vanguard, and they've talked about sort of their institutions and how they manage the money and their relationship with ASB. Today we thought we'd do something a little bit different where we talk to you guys about what's a wealth manager, what do you actually do at ASB, and what sort of questions are customers asking and how you do respond to that, and what are people worried about, and maybe some trends that we're seeing that's going on that we saw last year, and as we start the new decade or the new year, what are we going to see in 2020? Okay, how does that sound?
Sounds perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we might start. So maybe ladies first. Like, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Rebecca. And you know, what does Rebecca do in her spare time and things like that?
So I moved to Auckland about 9 years ago. So enjoy living in Auckland. In my spare time, I've got a son who's 11, and for some stupid reason decided to get another dog. So I've now got two dogs, a 2-year-old and a 15-week-old puppy. So
Wow.
At the moment, most of my time is trying to train that.
Okay. And what sort of puppies, dogs do you have?
Spoodles.
Spoodles?
Yes.
How do you make a spoodle?
Spaniel and a poodle.
Spaniel and a poodle. Okay, wow, great. Cool, and how long have you been at ASB?
ASB 9 years as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Glenn from...
Cambridge, yeah. Quick background on me. So I grew up in Rotorua, ended up doing some study in Hamilton. First job was at Westpac Trust. There might be some customers that remember that. The merger in 1998.
Oh, yeah.
I was drawing down home loans. But then I followed my boss over to the UK, and that's where I got introduced to finance. Worked at 2 investment banks over there. Came back to New Zealand, ended up in Auckland for a decade, working at ASB. Very fortunate. ASB paid for my study, diploma in financial planning.
Thank you.
And moved down to Cambridge about 3 years ago. So once again, really lucky that I was given the opportunity to do that for loads of personal reasons, family and stuff like that.
And so family in Cambridge?
Yeah. 2 little children who are growing up pretty quick, and my family and my wife's family are down that way as well. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Mr. Lewington, Sean Lewington, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've based in the UK, probably tell from my accent. Been here 13 years now, maybe
Okay.
14 years. Very much family from the UK, brought all the family out here. So yeah, based in Auckland, yeah. Love the job, gives a real variety in terms of where we are.
And how long have you been at ASB?
12 and a half.
12 and a half
I remember
years.
meeting you, Jonathan.
There's a bit of a story about
There
how
is
you
a bit of a story,
how
isn't
you
there?
joined ASB. I remember meeting you, was it 13 and a half, 14 years, when you just arrived?
Just arrived off the boat.
And I remember I met Sean,
Yeah.
and he wanted a job at ASB, and I said to him, I'll give you a job, but not now. Come back in 12 months' time, because you don't know anything about New Zealand and you need to go and learn about financial services in New Zealand. So he went off, and I thought, I'll never hear again from him. And then to the 12 months to the day, he phoned me up and said, you said you'd give me a job. Can I have a job? And then we gave you a job. And
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure ever since.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
No, best
Okay.
bit of advice I got. Very
Fantastic.
Good. Yeah,
All right,
it was,
so you guys seem to have quite a varied background and from different places in the world, and have done things differently in the past. But you're all wealth managers, as we call them at ASB. So maybe let's start with a real simple question. Maybe I'll start with you, Glenn. So wealth manager, what does that actually mean? What do you actually do as a wealth manager?
Yeah, look, we give financial advice on behalf of ASB. And typically what we do is we work through a process with our clients. We spend a lot of time planning. And that's where we get to know the customer, work out what's important to them, what do they need the money to do, understanding the bigger picture, the financial side of things, the personal side of things, and mapping out a strategy to helping them achieve all their financial goals.
Fantastic. And how would you add to that, Sean? What other sort of things do you think you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Job's about people. Spend a lot of time understanding people. We're absolutely privileged here. We meet a wide background of people you would never meet unless you work for ASB. Yeah. So, it's a good part. I've always enjoyed that. Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. And Rebecca, what else do you think you do as a wealth manager at ASB?
I think, and going on from what Glenn said, obviously we see a lot of new customers, but we actually look after a lot of existing customers as well who have already chosen to invest with ASB. So a lot of that time is spent just making sure that what they're doing is still the right thing for them, give them confidence that what they're doing is still the right thing and they're going to be able to achieve their goals.
Yeah, I always like the word wealth, though, don't you? Like I think one of the best jobs I had was a wealth coach, and every time I used to come into Auckland Airport, International Airport, and I'd try and go through passport, you have to fill out what your occupation was, and I'd always write wealth coach, and they'd always talk to me for 15 minutes, going, well, what's a wealth coach? That sounds awesome, and I sort of explained what I did, and then after a few times of doing it, I decided I started writing banker instead of wealth coach, because no one ever asked you what a banker is, and it was much quicker getting through international airport. But wealth's a really interesting word to use, actually, because I suppose your job, I suppose, is to help people grow their wealth. Is that what you sort of, if you really bring it down, is that what you think you're there to do, Glenn?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. We see customers who are wanting to grow their wealth for the future. We see a lot of customers that have made their wealth and now they're looking potentially for an income as they're moving into retirement. And family's a big part of that, and they're wanting to retain their wealth, possibly for the benefit of their family.
And a lot of people, I think, when they think about wealth managers or investment advisors, or like in the UK, Sean, you were probably called a financial consultant, weren't you?
That's right, yeah, was at one time. Yeah.
And so there's all these different names, but I suppose what the real goal is to understand the customers in front of you and actually what are they trying to achieve. Yeah. So how do you actually get people to sort of talk to you about what do they want to achieve and what's important to you? How do you do that, Rebecca?
I think you've got to build trust and a bit of a relationship. So that first meeting or that first contact is really just understanding the customer, getting them to know you and letting them know who you are and why you're there to help them, and building that trust. And then once you start building that trust, it's just really talking to them about them and what's important to them. And people seem to open up and they know you're there to help them, so they're happy to.
And do you think they open up more to a wealth manager than sort of maybe other people across the bank or in there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What sort of experiences have you had with people sort of telling you stuff? And
a fun part of the job, the part that I absolutely love is hearing the customers' stories of how they've made their money, the journey that they've been on. So often like to start talking about that. Where's the money come from and how have you made the money? And often it can be through business or owning property. There's lots of different types of stories. Yeah. So often finding out the history and then building on that.
Yeah, there is a uniqueness that I notice here compared to the UK, which is a lot of self-employed people who have done really, really well. Had a niche in the marketplace. I work in Kerry outside. You can do a lot of those jobs outside the main regions. So you do see a lot of different types of people who've either built their wealth, and we're looking at from next generations a lot of the time.
And you talk about Kerry. Do you see a lot of people who are sort of have moved to Kerry from other parts of the world or from out of Auckland?
Yeah, I've been going there about 10 years now. It's actually busy now.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you go to a cafe, it's like going to an Auckland cafe, so you've seen a lot of people exit out of Auckland and use that as a place to live for lots of different reasons, and the spare cash from the home go towards their lifestyle and retirement. So, yeah, a lot of that, yeah.
And you've seen that in Cambridge and Waikato, Glenn?
Yeah, a huge amount of that. I think with the growth in property prices over the last few years, over the last decade, a lot of clients have understood they're sitting on a house in Auckland that might be worth $2 million or $1 million. and they're taking the opportunity to cash that out. In the 3 years I've been down in the Waikato, I've seen a ton of customers doing exactly that, moving out of Auckland, selling the home, moving to coastal areas or other parts in the regions. They might buy a house for 700,000 or 800,000, and we help them with investing the rest and generating an income if that's what they're looking for.
Wow! And what for 700,000? What sort of property can you get in Waikato?
Well, a couple of maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you could get something quite nice, but prices have definitely moved. They obviously haven't caught up to Auckland, but I think there's the gap's narrowing. I think, but between the regions.
You moved up from the South Island.
You're from Dunedin,
and do you see see differences in how people sort of think around their sort of lifestyle and their wealth in Dunedin to up into Auckland, or is it just? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, particularly in Dunedin, I mean, this is 10 years ago, but, your house, it wasn't the values that it is in Auckland. And so, their retirement or moving away from Dunedin wasn't really an option in terms of for their next step in retirement. So what they're building in cash or excess income or what that is it not normally come from their house. The other thing you probably see is people generally bought houses in Dunedin for the income yield, not necessarily the capital growth. So there was different rationale as to buying a property.
So really interesting. So about sort of what you're seeing out there, but maybe let's just sort of distill it down a little bit. So you've got these customers who maybe had an asset or a business that they've sold, and they're having a lifestyle change, and they're sitting down with you to have a conversation. What are some of the questions or the concerns that customers have at that point? Do you want to kick us off, Glenn?
Yeah, I think they've made the money, and if someone's retiring now, I mean, people are easily living into their 90s. And so I think retention of that capital is really, really important. And so if you're talking about a retirement time frame of 25 or 30 years, if they're not going to go back to work, that's a really long period of time that they need to ensure their money's working. So they want that clarity that they can make it work for them. And often they're looking for a supplementary income.
Yeah. And do they worry about running out of money? Is that something that's...
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they want to know that the capital is going to last. Yeah.
And how do you go about sort of helping them understand that they've got enough money or they haven't got enough money?
Well, that's part of the fantastic tools that we have, is that we can get to a point where when we understand what their needs are, we can look at the right type of strategy, and we can actually give them advice and give them that clarity, so we can graphically show them, look, if you have X amount invested in this type of strategy, drawing this much income off after fees, tax and inflation, what's it all going to look like over 5, 10, 15, 20 years plus?
Fantastic.
So they get that peace of mind.
Cool. And Sean, what do you see when, what sort of questions are you getting asked?
There are concerns when people, they've been used to a rising income through their job, and now they're coming to a fixed income, whether that's the New Zealand super or any other assets they've got, but they do see escalating costs, especially healthcare. So they're definitely looking for comfort from ourselves and assurance that they can afford to do that. So definitely see a lot of that nowadays.
But I suppose you're going from maybe a certainty to uncertainty. Yeah. So you've got sort of even if you're thinking about, a lot of customers, I suppose, would have had money in term deposit or in cash, and they know what their rate of interest is going to be. Yeah. But then if you start investing into different asset classes, you can never say actually what you're going to get. How do you actually sort of balance that sort of, you're moving from certainty to uncertainty?
In terms of the objectives of what you're trying to, because you've been used to, you come into the bank, somebody rings you up, your term deposit's maturing, what can I put it on? And that's been a behavioural over that period of time, rather than looking into the future. And that's very much our role in terms of looking at the asset classes, where you are, what they've got to try and achieve, rather than looking at the rate of return, which is down to the underlying assets. So we do look into people's what they're trying to achieve, what their objectives are, rather than focusing on the next 6 to 12 months. So there's a lot more future
So you take a sort of
forecasting.
more medium to long term
Absolutely,
view.
absolutely, yeah.
And I think also a big part of a wealth manager's role is actually help them educate to understand those different asset classes, because a lot of people that we see certainly have come in and cash or term deposit has been their main source of investment experience. So a big part of what we're doing with customers is helping them understand, well, what is that investment world and how to help them understand it. KiwiSaver's helped a little bit with people's education, but certainly, a big role we play is helping give clients confidence around what that other world looks like.
And do you see customers with KiwiSaver? Is that more
Every
prevalent?
day.
Every day?
Every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often, obviously, the balance of the KiwiSaver will be less compared to other assets that they've got. But they still notice it moving around, and they're sort of understanding that, it does move around, unlike a term deposit.
And then the change in July, I think it was, where if you're over 65, you can start putting money into or join KiwiSaver. Have you seen? Is that sort of something that you're seeing on the front line, that customers are thinking about KiwiSaver a bit differently?
Absolutely, and we've even got existing customers who have invested in other types of funds and are going, well, now is KiwiSaver a more appropriate product that we should be in, or how do we use it and complement what we're doing with other things? So it's definitely becoming more front of mind for customers.
We've certainly seen a lot of people at age 65 who cash their KiwiSaver in because they could.
Yeah,
are now coming back to reopen it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So
or thought they had to close it.
I was going to say a lot of clients thought they had to.
Yeah. Okay, and so you've got so you're helping people more sort of long term, and they're worried a little bit about sort of, am I going to run out of money, or what am I going to get? What about sort of attitude to risk or risk tolerance? How do you deal with? Do people have questions around the risk element of investing? I'm sure that's prevalent.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, one of the first things customers walk in saying is, I don't want to lose my money, and rightfully so. And most of the time, what they're meaning is they want to avoid capital loss. They've worked all their lives, they've built up these assets, and now's not the time to lose this cash, especially if they're going to retire. So it's very front of mind for them.
And a lot of people think that because they've retired, they need to stay really low risk because of that worry. And I think, going back to what I said earlier around the education piece, a lot of what we do is helping them understand, well, what is risk? The first question I would normally ask customers, what is risk to you? Because it's actually different for a lot of people. And some of the answers is a risk of losing all my money, risk that it's not going to be there when I'm 90. So I think it's really establishing what that customer means by risk, and then work with them to help them understand, how do we design something for them that's going to work.
Sean, you've been around a long time, so what do people say around risk tolerance when you're talking to them? Has it changed over the years?
I would say most people, a number of years ago, would say, don't talk to me about risk. And it is understanding what that means to that person. When you was getting 9.2% on a term deposit when I first came to New Zealand at the ASB Classic, it was there in the stands. Remember it, 2-year rate. Wasn't too late in the day, so I do remember it. So you've got 9.2. Why would you go into shares at that time? So things have definitely changed when you've seen interest rates now where they are. People's attitude to now wanting to look towards the future and will 2% after tax do it for me has definitely changed people's mindset.
And that's what Chris Taylor-Brown always talks about. He talks about, if you're going to go into the share market, you're going to take some risk. You're going to get you need a return on that. And
correct.
If you take a long term, what do you expect from a world share? You expect over the medium to long term, you should be getting sort of 8-9%. Well, if you're getting that in cash, what's the point?
Yeah.
But that's changed in your time in New Zealand, my time in New Zealand. That's completely flipped on his head now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're now seeing people who you wouldn't have seen before of rates where they are, but all you've seen since that time is returns coming back in that one asset class. I totally agree with KiwiSaver. I was here when you launched it. You even did a video on KiwiSaver. Very good, Jonathan.
It was a number one in the hit parade, I think, that for DVD.
Is it still trending? DVD. It was on DVD at the time, was it?
Yeah, it was just after videotape.
But having paid in, a lot of people call it painless extraction. It comes from the salary, comes from the employer as well, and now seeing some pretty large balances in KiwiSaver now, and seeing what I would say some very good returns recently as well. So, yeah.
Well, I think if you look at the last 10 years, you can't complain about the returns, can you?
No.
I do feel a little bit sorry for the person who came up with the idea of KiwiSaver when they launched it, because their timing was possibly the worst of any.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because suddenly right before the global financial crisis, and suddenly, so people took quite a while to actually start to see what investing to the medium to long term can actually do for them. You know, so it was a hard reality for some people.
My children have seen it and now started working, so their employer are paying it on part-time basis, go from $1,000 now over to $2,000. They see it drop and ask me, "Hey, Dad, what's going on there?" So it has certainly helped people.
But just because interest rates are low, Rebecca, doesn't mean you have to invest, does it?
Not at all.
Yeah, and is that part of the planning process?
Absolutely. That first meeting that we take clients through is really about understanding what they're trying to achieve and whether or not they actually need to do anything different. Yep. Ultimately, it's about finding the right solution for them. So that's exactly what you want to try and get out of that first meeting, and so they can walk away feeling confident that they're doing the right thing based on where they're at. So we see lots of customers where after our conversation with them, actually from what they've told us, term deposit is absolutely the right place for them.
It's quite a common question we can ask too is, do you need to move out of term deposit? Yeah. And often once you've spoken about their financial goals, it's pretty evident that they have to.
I was talking to a customer before Christmas, and they were saying, I need to get out of term deposit. I don't like term deposit. And I was like, okay, so why not? And they were like, well, I just don't like the rate. I go, okay, well, I get that, but there's almost in my mind there's like two types of customers. There's the customer who I need to live off the income that this term deposit is providing, and in the last few years it's halved. Yeah, so I used to get, say, I don't know, $40,000 of interest, and now I'm getting 20. That's going to impact on my lifestyle, and so you probably need to think about how you can do something different, or manage your money differently, or whatever. Or there's this other group of people actually where that doesn't impact their lifestyle because they've got so much money, but I actually don't like it because I've worked really hard, I've built up a business, or I've worked all my life. I actually don't want to see it whittled away. So there's almost like sort of two different customers come from it from two different points. Do you see that because you deal with some quite high net worth individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. So. I mean, if you look at just the dollar balance of what they've got and what they need on just purely an income need, they probably don't need to do anything different. Yeah. But that's when having those conversations with them about, well, why do you want to do something different? What's important to you? And a big part of it is actually exactly what you said. Look, I've worked really, really hard for this money. Yeah. I don't want to see it in 20 years' time. It may still be worth the same, but actually, as we all know, costs go up and inflation impacts it, and it's actually worth less. So for them, because they've worked hard, they want to maintain it and pass it down.
Yeah, they want to make sure the money's working hard.
Yeah.
They've worked hard for the monmoney.
Yeah.
They don't want their money.
Yeah.
Sitting there.
Yeah. Sitting there, and that's how they see it.
Especially sort of, you deal with a lot of people who've run businesses and stuff. They're risk takers. They're used to sort of doing something different. They've worked really hard.
They want a return on capital.
Why are they suddenly going to change everything they've done and go, actually, I'm just happy to sit and do nothing? Interesting. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about sort of new customers. What about, and you all look after, I suppose, the existing customers as well. So if you reflect back on 2019, what were some of the questions or concerns that were raised through your existing customers? What were they asking?
I think the biggest question that a lot of my clients were asking was really around, there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of negative news in the media around what was going on with China and the US and Trump. And so really the biggest question was, how's that going to impact me and my ability to achieve what I want? Yeah. And so, a lot of time we spent with customers reviewing their needs, reviewing their goals, and giving them confidence that actually, because we're investing for the longer term, we've got the ability to ride out those ups and downs. Yeah. It's going to happen. Yeah. We don't know when the next thing Trump might say and how that will impact markets, but we really need to focus on that long-term view and just really give them the confidence that the money, that we're doing lots of work behind the scenes to ensure their money is working the right way.
That's really interesting the way you answered that question, because you were talking about sort of, Trump and markets going up and down, but you didn't answer the question about talking about markets. You answered the question about what were their needs and what were their plans. So that's quite interesting. So is that the sort of conversation you have, rather than this is what the investment manager's doing? It's more about why they invested the money?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because why they invest in money is ultimately why we've done what we've done.
Yeah.
So we can't control markets. Markets, we've got great investment managers and they do an awesome job, but no one can control what, as I said, Trump might say or how the markets might react. So it's really about focusing on
Trump can't even control what he was going to say.
That's true. So it's really about making sure that why we invest in money is still the same thing. It's still valid, and then focusing on how we can make sure that can be achieved in the longer term.
You get similar questions, Glenn?
Yeah, and I think falling back on an investment plan that you've got and you've developed an investment plan, go back to it and say, this is the reason why we did this. So take all the emotion out of it. Here, this was the plan. Has anything changed? No. All right. Well, we have a plan. Let's stick to this.
Yeah. Sean, the plan's the important part of it?
The plan's the absolute important part. You have seen double-digit returns across most asset classes in terms of the strategies that we have. Will that continue? Things change all the time. One thing I've noticed in the time I've been doing the rolling I remember working for the Pru. I had a grey book. It was called my rate book when I went to see clients. There wasn't too much noise. There's a lot of noise now. In terms of Twitter, you get the news instantaneously, your phone pings. I'm sure there's things been happening while we've been doing this. Is holding people's hands at times of uncertainty is a very, very important part of this job.
I used to work for the Pru and people used to phone us up and want a valuation. Pru being the Prudential.
Yeah, Prudential,
If you ever go and see the Pru's head office, it's on Holborn in the city of London. And it's this beautiful, it's similar to the colour of the wall in here. So it's like a pink building. It's massive. And that's the headquarters of the Prudential company, a huge life assurance investment company. But when I used to work for them, people used to phone up and say, can I have a valuation of my portfolio or my investment, please? And we go, yes, give us 6 weeks and we'll get back to you. Imagine doing that now. Like, you just wouldn't last a second, would you? But you're right, everything's so
quick. Yeah.
But does that actually help customers though, with all this noise?
I don't think it does. Some clients are fine because they understand the nature of it. But those clients that are probably naturally a bit more nervous or never done it before, when they're seeing it on their phone or logging in and they're seeing those values fluctuate, it does make them a little bit more nervous. So, as Sean said, that hand-holding, reassuring them about what we've done and why we've done it is actually really, really important.
There's definitely a feel-good factor when markets go up.
Totally, yeah.
Absolute feel-good factor, same as your house going up and you're getting more equity. Our role, and when we earn our money, is making sure we go back to the plan and make sure that's still on track. That's when you're really earning your money as a wealth manager. Yeah.
I remember working through the global financial crisis, and I actually started a new role. And I took over a client book at the beginning of 2008. So not a particularly great time to...
Good timing.
Yeah, change roles. And that first year was me just, meeting customers, explaining that their portfolios had gone down in value, but then reassuring them. But in that time, I never had a portfolio closed because they knew they could pick up the phone and ring me. They knew they could have a conversation if they were worried. And it was just that reassurance and going back to the original reason why they invested that helped give them that comfort.
Yeah, I just think... I don't know, customers just want to know, don't they? You shouldn't be hiding anything. It's just like, this is what's going on and why and how does this impact me? And as long as they know that, then actually that gives them the comfort. They still may not like it, but actually I actually understand it. I think that's half the battle. If you get customers to really understand the why, then actually they can sleep at night and know that it's in safe hands, and actually all this money I've worked really hard for is
there's 24-hour news nowadays.
Yeah.
So you can stay up all night worrying about things. So
and it's being honest. We get asked questions. Well, when's it going to be? When the market's going to come back, or they've been on a run for the last 10 years? It's going to be a crash at some stage. Yeah. I'd love to know the answer to that question, but I really don't. No. And so
Can you tell me if you know? So
sure. Yeah. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to tell you because I'll keep it to myself.
That's right.
Yeah, charming. But yeah, it's being honest with people. And if you don't, I can't answer all their questions, but we can still reassure them around what they're doing and why they're doing it.
And so people have been asking about sort of how it affects their markets, affect their portfolio. What other sort of questions you've been getting over the last sort of 12 months that people have been worried about?
The biggest one for me would be really around interest rates and the impact on their fixed interest within their portfolios. Yeah. They've actually seen, because rates have fallen, their returns on their fixed interest assets have done really, really well.
Yes.
But when rates do start to rise again, that's going to have a negative impact. So I think clients are just worried about how that actually...
You transition then.
How it's going to impact in the longer term. And, they're looking at their fixed interest asset and going, oh my God, it's in 6 or 7%, which is quite abnormal when actually the interest rate they're getting in terms of the income is around 2. Yep. And it's just helping clients understand that relationship and actually what that impact is going to be longer term.
Yep. And interest rates is for you
Yeah,
there as well?
definitely. Yeah. We have the old conversation around how low will they go and how long, will they go negative? We've seen that overseas, and can I get a negative mortgage at ASB like they do in some places in Europe? The other question we sometimes get, or a conversation we have around, is should we buy property? Should we buy a rental property? That's the other option for us with this capital that we have. So often it's then looking at the pros and cons of should you go down that path, or can we help you with different assets at our end?
And what are you seeing any trends or anything different around people buying rental properties? People still doing it or getting out of them? Or?
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of customers moving out of Auckland, selling different types of property, but just recently in the last probably year or 18 months, I've seen a lot of customers who are getting fed up with rental properties, just in terms of, it seems like the rights are sort of shifting into favour of the tenants, and there's a lot more legislation coming in around how the properties need to be insulated, so there's all these additional costs, and they have bad tenants, and so we've seen a lot of customers sort of debating, is now a good time to sell it? We've made good gains on it. I can't be bothered with a hassle, so should we pull out and do something different, or should I sell one of my two and do something different with that capital?
And you help customers with those sort of decisions? And
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of the time, the customers that I see, especially if they're moving into retirement, they are looking for income. And look, with a rental property, once you take off rates and insurances and maintenance and tax is the big one, often the income's not quite there. And so something we can give them, which is a bit different, is the thought of a portfolio where we'll try and produce the income, but look, if it isn't there, you have the ability to draw down on this. You can draw down on it. You can't just sell a bathroom off on a property and release 50k. It's all bathroom.
It's a nice
right?
bathroom.
That'd be a nice bathroom for 50k.
I'd
love to see your bathroom.
That's pretty normal in Cambridge, isn't it?
Gold tap.
They're known for their bathrooms in Cambridge.
Noted.
That's really interesting. Are you seeing that at all, Sean, when you're sort of travelling up in Northland? And
absolutely. Concern are rising medical costs. Rates are going up. Will their strategy or investment continue to go up with that? And one thing I do see is people don't really like to eat into their capital, but are realising that maybe they need to in future, and that's something that we've seen as interest rates and yields across different asset classes have come back. I think there's a realisation now, if you want that lifestyle that you need, absolutely.
But I think that comes back to the worry that I'm going to run out of money. I think Glenn said it earlier about, you could be in retirement for 25, 30 years. That's probably the same amount of time as some people actually have worked. Like it's almost like quite a scary.
People love travelling in New Zealand, don't they?
Exactly.
They travel.
But I think there's a sort of almost different phases in retirement. Like you don't see many 87-year-olds travelling the world, hiking up mountains and stuff. But you have your sort of spending years between sort of 65 and 75.
Your 20 great summers.
Then after that, it's
a
a little bit different, where actually then, as you've mentioned a couple of times, healthcare becomes a bit of an issue and how you fund that. So there's almost like different phases of your retirement, and how you plan for that is going to be key.
It's that bill that comes through the post that you're not quite sure what that's going to be. People want the assurance that they've got cash to do that.
I think that's the best part of one of our jobs, is actually helping people know that they can spend what they want to, or sometimes spend more. And we often get clients to sort of look at what sort of life they want and how much it's going to cost them, and giving a client news that actually you can spend your $50,000 on travel or whatever it may be is actually a really awesome feeling. Yeah. And seeing the confidence in their eyes, knowing that they can do these things and still enjoy life and not worry about running out.
We have clients who are concerned that their children or their grandchildren, how are they going to buy their first home?
Yeah.
So having that conversation around, well, look, why don't you give them $200,000 now, and look, you can afford to do that because the rest of your capital is going to be there. So why wait 20 or 30 years, and you get the benefit of seeing them, enjoy that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, and then so I might actually sort of go around quickly, because Rebecca sort of put an idea in my head around like what's the best part of the job. So I'll come back to you in a second, Rebecca. But you guys have been a wealth man. You've done it here and in the UK. You must like it. because you've been doing it for a while. Yeah. So, what is the best part of being a wealth manager or financial advisor or
People.
Understanding
people, why they've got where they have, decisions that they've made, and building that relationship over a longer time. Yeah, we had the privilege of going to the tennis this year, some of our clients, and building that relationship. Oh, that's the best bit of the job.
Yeah, got to be.
Absolutely.
At the tennis with clients, it's a hard job.
Absolutely. It's part of the gig.
Somebody
It's interesting. I was thinking today when I was coming in, why did I get into it? I was a paper boy. And I met politicians and all different people from all different backgrounds. And I used to love dropping the paper off and talking to them. It's not really changed over that period of time. And that was 14, I was doing my paper round.
Jeepers.
Nearly 40 years, not quite. But absolutely. Company we work for, work with some great people as well. And and it changes. The roles really changed over that period of time. Being here, the way things are now has really evolved over the 12 years with legislation and giving customers more confidence in who they're working with.
Brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
People, I'd say.
People. Glenn, what's the best part of being a wealth manager?
I love to see where people have come from, the history and how they've made their money. But in that first meeting, we have, it's an awesome conversation because we have this conversation around what do you want to do with your money, which is always a nice conversation to have because it's, them talking about where they want to go on holiday. And it's about how they're going to help their family out. So it's always a really positive conversation. So it's for me, that's probably the standout.
Fantastic. And Rebecca, what's the best
And I'm not
part?
going to go against the grain, but it's definitely the people. You build some great relationships, and money's a really private thing, but knowing that you're helping someone do the things they want to do, and you when they come back from holidays, sitting down and looking at the photos and the relationships, and you say sometimes friendships sometimes you build, but knowing that you're helping them and letting them enjoy their life, but maybe their family's life as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'd agree. When I was an advisor, I used to, when I worked in legal in general, I got in, I was like the young guy and everyone else was sort of, much older than me. And most of them were ex-miners. They come out of the miners' strike and then became financial advisors, which was a bit odd. And they always just say, the best part of the job is the people and the relationship, and and they tell you stuff. And it's like, and when you start out, people don't really tell you stuff and stuff, but actually the longer you do it, you almost become like part of the family with some customers that actually everything about them. Then they start asking you advice that's not actually financial advice or investment advice. It's actually, hey, I've got my son's doing this, or can you do that? And I look back at that, and that's the bit I've really enjoyed the most, is actually being brought in and asked your opinion on different things. It just shows how close you can get to customers, and once they really trust you,
absolutely,
it's just an awesome
And some of the
job.
things they tell you are certainly not
things
you're going to probably repeat.
Totally. But hey, well, I think you guys are doing a great job, and it's been lovely talking to you for a wee while. And the thing that's really come out to me is just that focus on actually the conversation you have and getting to know the people, and actually trying to find some common ground, and so they feel comfortable about and make the investment decisions they make initially and then ongoing. So thanks very much for all the work and hard effort you put in. I'm sure your customers are very thankful as well, and hope you've found the experience in the booth pretty cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Cheers. Thanks for joining us today on the ASB Investment Podcast. If you have any thoughts on today's episode, or if there's anything you'd like us to discuss on future shows, please fire your suggestions through to podcasts@asb.co.nz.